In Washington now, former President Donald Trump returned to the Capitol as a criminal defendant yesterday. He was arraigned on federal charges for an alleged conspiracy to disrupt the legal transfer of power and interfere with people's right to vote. Afterwards, Trump claimed that his rights were being violated. Robert Costa is outside the D.C. courthouse. Bob, good morning.
President Trump arrived here at this courthouse behind me yesterday, went inside, and he was read his rights. He then pleaded not guilty. This was a courtroom where so many January 6 defendants have been processed over the last few years. But unlike those other defendants, Trump is running for the White House and lashing out at the Justice Department.
You can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him.
Former President Donald Trump, the front runner in the Republican presidential race, pushed back Thursday against the Justice Department, which alleges he led a sweeping criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election.
When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America.
Those comments came after an historic day in Washington, with Trump arriving in the nation's capital and traveling to the federal courthouse under heavy security, escorted by his Secret Service detail.
Lock him up! Lock him up!
Crowds of protesters and supporters gathered outside. Once inside, he was fingerprinted but not handcuffed, and no mugshot was taken. Inside the courtroom, Trump sat, his hands folded at the defense table, occasionally talking to his lawyers. Trump was then sworn in, stated his name, and when asked his age, said 77, paused, and then 77. He pleaded not guilty to 4 felony charges. The judge told Trump the obstruction charge alone could carry up to 20 years in prison. The charges were the latest turn in an ongoing grand jury investigation being led by special counsel Jack Smith, who sat roughly 20 feet away. Also inside the quiet courtroom, U.S. Capitol police officers who defended the Capitol against rioters and testified in front of the House January 6 committee. But despite mounting legal troubles, Trump is plowing ahead in the race for the White House, with allies hoping his supporters will rally behind him and donate. Trump took to social media hours before the arraignment, saying, "I need one more indictment to ensure my election." Former federal prosecutor Scott Frederickson says the road ahead could be tricky for Trump as he faces multiple trials.
And the fact that the president is running for president, the nomination of his party, doesn't change the fact that he's under an obligation to show up for trial.
The judge has scheduled the next hearing in this January 6 case for August 28th. That's 5 days after the upcoming first Republican presidential primary debate scheduled to be held in Milwaukee. Former President Trump has not yet decided whether he will attend, though he has said publicly he's at this point leaning against it. Anne Marie?
So, Bob, I want to get into what happened yesterday, but you sort of bring up something interesting that, in a way, the former president has been bringing up as well. It's really difficult to separate the judicial from the political. And here we have our first kind of dilemma, the debate and the court case the next hearing, 5 days apart. If Donald Trump chooses not to participate in that debate, as you have said, he's suggesting he won't, does that say something about his influence within the Republican Party? Because, candidates take to the stage because they think it's an opportunity to show their strengths. But if he doesn't think he has to, what does that say about his confidence?
Inside Trump's campaign, Anne-Marie, there's a belief that they have the top position in the polls, that they're dominating often over 50% in most Republican primary polls. And because of that position, they don't feel pressure to show up, though Trump has not ruled it out. And he had dinner just a few nights ago with Fox News executives who are hosting the debate in Milwaukee as he mulls whether it makes sense for him politically to go. Because when you talk to Trump allies, they say he will not be able to stand watching television and watching a debate and hearing his rivals attack him, and he doesn't have an opportunity to counterattack them. That's part of his nature. He likes to punch back, as he has often said. At the same time, there's political risk in showing up and becoming a target for your rivals who are really looking for political oxygen in this race.
All right, so let's talk about what happened yesterday and what happens next, really. The next court date is at the end of this month. As I understand it, Donald Trump doesn't have to be there. So what will be taking place between now and then?
Between now and then, there's going to be a lot taking place for former President Trump. He has that debate on the horizon. He has the court hearing on August 28th, and he has a possible indictment in Georgia. A charging decision will soon be made by the Fulton County District Attorney down in the Atlanta area, whether to charge Trump with a related charge about a conspiracy to overturn the election in Georgia. And so now Trump, as a frontrunner for the Republican nomination, is facing a trial that's coming up in New York sometime next year, an ongoing investigation and indictment of his handling of classified records, the charge of being the spearhead of a criminal conspiracy against the country he once led, and then that case in Georgia as well. All that on top of the presidential campaign.